Yeah, I've got a nice table all queued up, ready to go. Just sat in. My next hand will be the big blind. So here we are, and yeah, gonna just try and play a regular old session, focused. Let's pay attention to the hands that were not dealt in to the best of our ability, and when there's chat, we'll chat. So there was a raise from the hijack after only one blind was posted. Ace 6-5, that's a pretty good board for the raiser, not as good for the caller. And the raiser chose not to bet, and so the out of position player just took it down on the turn. 3-4 having turned the nuts. Pot size raise from the player first to act, which should be noted is again the hijack, because the button who has $29 is not dealt in. They must have missed a blind, as we just saw. They were not the blind last hand. So as a result, this player's range is maybe a little looser than it otherwise would be. Ace 995 has some things going for it, but I don't want to, call a raise against a open raise from the hijack, as that range is a little bit too strong, and my hand's just not that good, right? The nines don't really have anything to do with the ace, or barely with the 5, and I have 3 cards of a suit, which is a negative. I mean, it's better than having just a rainbow hand, but it's not very good. Thanks to, I guess, Tuna Helpa and Lucian29 for the follows. We're getting pretty close. About another dozen to go, and then we'll have an affiliate stream. And at that point, I think I'll start streaming some more stuff, and upping the hours. We'll see how it goes. But thank you to everybody who follows and watches. And if you're watching this on YouTube, there's a link in the description. You can head over to Twitch and watch live there, and and then interact about the hands and such. All right. I woke up a little extra early this morning, so I felt pretty focused about half an hour ago. That might have slipped a little. I started to do a bit of a poker warm-up, but truthfully I haven't. Like, my morning routine is my warm-up, but I should develop a 1 or 2 minute procedure just to kind of get in maximal focus. 6-6-5 deuce. This actually, maybe I do play this hand on the button if it folds to me. I think so. If somebody enters ahead of me, I think I'll go ahead and fold it. The deuce is a very bad card, but it does connect to the 5 and the 6, so it's not total garbage. And a pair of sixes is, a useful component of the hand, as is a suit, although a 6 high suit. Generally, one of the reasons I'm going to open raise it but not play it against, even a limp, is that a 6 high suit is of much more value heads up as like one component to a hand than it is in a multi-way pot. So here we have a limper, and we will note that. So far this game doesn't look fantastic. That doesn't mean it's bad. It's just some of the games I've been playing in recently, there's 3 players who want to play almost every hand, which is what I would call a fantastic game. But here, this is merely adequate. All right, King Queen 6, okayish hand, okayish board for the pre-flop raiser. They're gonna have King King, Queen Queen, probably at a higher frequency than the limper or the other person. Okay, and nobody has. They must have made a boat, eh? Yeah, King 6. So they flop top and bottom pair against. I think the other player had. Let's look at the. Let's just pop this up. Yeah, the other player had a really nice flop, right? They had middle pair, backdoor flush draw, nut flush draw, and a gut shot. So they were actually a favorite over the 2 pair hand. On the flop. On the turn, a little different story. I think they're a dog. All right. I wonder if there's a. Oh, what am I doing? All right, this? No. Oh, it's this one. Aye. There should be some hotkey. Oh, on the turn they were 92%. Yeah, they turned the nuts. My bad. Definitely a little different on the turn, but not worse. All right, so if I was like double suited queens with a king and maybe not a 3, I would go ahead and 3-bet this some, I think. 10-6-6, pretty decent for me. I have an overpair. No real reason to think that this person has 6 that often. When they check it twice, I think I can half pot here and get them to fold their, ace-king type combinations. A jack is not a great card because pocket jacks is a lot of what I was trying to get value from. They can have ace-ace, they can have king-king. I think they might have tried to get more chips in earlier with ace-ace, but I think that's enough of their range. I'm going to go ahead and check it back. Maybe I could have gotten some kind of thin value there on the river. Not super sure. But, I'm okay with how it went. Quite poor hand, right? Jack 10 and 5-4 are both connectors, but they don't connect to one another, so the cards don't all work in unison, and one jack high suit isn't enough to swing the balance there. Against an open raise, not too much to think about here. If it folded to me single suited or tri-suited with the bonus card of the suit, I don't think I would be super jazzed about it. I think I fold this hand pre, but if I were double suited, it's pretty good for a button open, like make the queen a diamond. All right, 8-8 deuce, pretty good for the cold calling range. I think they're gonna have some rundowns and stuff. I'm not really sure what correct cold calling ranges are in the small blind. I'm not cold calling much at all in that spot. Double suited kings with a queen and a jack. So these are some primo kings. I don't have any ace, so if I get 3-bet, there is the concern that they can very likely have ace-ace. I'm super happy to take a flop here. Now, if this person were to jam, I need to think about whether it reopened the action, which it wouldn't have, right? It wouldn't have been a full raise if they put all their money in. So I'm going to call here. I don't think this is a 4-betting spot. And I flop the second nut flush draw on a straightening board. They can certainly flop some straights here. They can have some ace-high flush draws. It's an awkward spot to play, I think. They are going to have a decent amount of ace-ace, I think. At this point, I don't think they're going to have very many very good hands. So I'm actually going to raise. Let's make it something like this. And try and get them to fold maybe aces and get heads up against, sure, they had a straight, that's fine. But I definitely was going to call with my flush draw. So since I wasn't folding, I don't know what the person had behind me, but if my kings happen to be good, then I definitely want to get heads up and deny the equity to the person behind me. And in addition to that, if my kings are not good, but maybe the person has ace-high flush draw, I don't know. I guess if my kings are not good, then getting them to fold doesn't help that much. But the bet was so small relative to the size of the pot, and I felt pretty confident that the person behind me would fold if I raised, but maybe would come along if I called. Yeah, I got to think that one over. Anyway, I marked it. We'll look at it in the review. And as always, if anybody has any hands that they would like to discuss in the session review, just type in the cards that I'm holding, that are my hold cards, like in this hand, King, Queen, 8-7, right? Or KQ, 8-7. Or 7Q, 8K. Okay. And I will mark that hand and then do it in the session review. I don't want to talk about hands that have already been completed too much while playing. I think it takes away from the focus, and it's better to be able to have as long with a given hand, just totally zoning in on it as possible. All right, so Queen 8, 4th tray. Very, pretty disconnected board. I mean, it's not like there aren't draws. There's always draws in PLO, unless there's like quads on board. But nobody seemed to show much interest. That's a spot where the button, I think, can bet a lot of hands. Even though there's a good amount of draws, I think the out-of-position players will often bet with them. And if you're in position and you bet and you get called, then if the opponent checks to you on the river, you can often take it down with a bet. So kind of having a bluff with some conviction, bluff with legs on it, I think can be very effective. All right, 9954. This is not a hand I'm going to call raise with. I don't mind getting a free flop with it, though. I've got, some possibilities. And actually, if it folds to the small blind, I might defend this against a small blind raise. The key component there being, first of all, they can't raise as much. Now, this is a smaller raise, which makes me want to play more hands, right? I'm going to expand my calling range, but not quite to this. If the 4 were a 6, 7, or 8, I would definitely be calling this raise. But yeah, if the small blind raises and I'm the big blind, then I'm going to have position on them for the rest of the hand. So that's a big deal. So, I can play more hands in that scenario. All right, we have a limp, another limp, another limp. This is, I think I can put in another 50 cents here. It's not a very good hand by any stretch. I'm certainly not going to put in another $6. But, there's some very good flops, right? If a flop comes something like ace 2 4, then I flop the nuts with a redraw to bigger nuts. If the flop comes just 2 4 whatever, then I have a wrap, the over wrap. 4 7, I have the under wrap. That's not great. And a 5, if nobody's that excited, and I make a set of 5s, that can be pretty good. The 6 high flush, the 6 and the 5 being suited, there's a lot of action here. Wow, I would have just missed everything on the board. But yeah, the 5 and the 6 being suited means I could make a straight flush against like an ace high flush or something. So I think this hand would play okay for a limp. But as it turned out, everybody wanted to put $27 in the pot each. And somebody flops trips, somebody flops a boat, and somebody flops a bigger boat. Wow. So that person with the 8 with the trips, 8 6 4 deuce, who flopped 3 4s, they had no way of winning the hand, right? I guess nobody did. Was that just 100% equity on the flop? Let's see. Yeah, you don't often flop 100% equity, but when you flop the top full ace ace on ace 4 4, and 2 different people have the 4, then you're good. Okay. Do I want to flat? Do I want to 3-bet? I'm going to call here. I'm going to mark this hand right away for pre-flop. And after the session, all the pre-flop hands we're going to take a look at in the PLO matrix, which I recently acquired access to. Okay, so I am blocking the straight. I don't have any clubs, which I don't like. And like I think aces are gonna maybe fold on a board like this. So I'm turning my kings into a bluff, but I still have some equity in case I get called. That's a very interesting turn card. Now, if they checked aces on the flop, I think there's no chance they're folding them here on the turn. If they had something else, though, maybe they're folding it. And I do have the backup of the nut flush draw. So do I want to keep putting money in here, basically repping a straight? I don't think I'm going to try and get them to fold on future streets. So I'm going to just go ahead and kind of give up here. Now the club comes in. And now I think a hand like a set of aces, I can get them to fold more often. I have no club blockers. If I had one club in my hand, I would turn this into a bluff. As it turns out, they rivered a straight. That's interesting. And if I really bombed the turn, I think they'd probably fold that. But yeah, so again, my kings had equity on the flop. I was actually ahead. And so I was betting. Oh, it's not. Why doesn't it show the... I don't know why it's not showing the percentages, the equity. But anyway, we'll take a look at that later. I think it's a fairly interesting hand. And certainly might have been, hands to triple barrel. Here, 8-7-6. If we kind of hypothetically play my hand, right? I have top set, that's great, but there's a possible straight on the flop. There's 3 ways of making a straight on the turn. There's a lot more than 3 ways of making a straight. So that would be a spot where I'm basically playing a set as a boat draw, and having the backdoor flush draw is nice as well. It's another way to beat a straight. I think that ace of spades turn was a very, very interesting card. All right, 350. They raise and fold. And so again, so far my evaluation of this table is that it's okay. 7 high rundown, single suited, not going to play it. The rake environment's very high. The games are very loose. And it probably doesn't make the cut anyway. So, you know, the pre-flop matrix uses a rake structure that's I can use the micro stakes rake structure, which is bad rake structure. It's a very high rake, but this is even worse than that, which is very unpleasant. It's very unfortunate. So I should basically take those recommendations and play them a little tighter and a little more aggressive, right? Like hands that look like, oh, maybe you can barely call. Like those are gonna be raises, or 3 bets, 4 bets, whatever. Uh, okay, so we have an open limp here from a player who does not look like very loose passive, right? 38-23. So they're playing 23% of their hands. Sorry, they're raising 23% of their hands and playing, another 15% passively. So this is, you know, my guess is that they don't have like a really soft range here. They've got some hands that have, like ace high suit, but not totally connected. Probably some hands that they shouldn't really have, but they're playing them anyway. I think I can get a fair amount of folds here where they're just going to have overcards that are going to have a lot of equity. I don't see any reason to really think that they're going to have too much. I probably should have potted it, honestly. I'm going to have a lot of 6-4 because I'm the big blind. I'm going to have, 7-5, 7-3, 5-5, all sorts of combos that they shouldn't have a whole lot of because their cards should be a little more coherent. And yeah, now they're playing 43% of their hands, so it's ticked up a little bit. So, probably too loose, too passive, but not way out of line. Not one of these 70-80% of hands kind of folks. All right, so this is technically you could call it an open limp, but I wouldn't usually. Ace, queen, 10, 6, so I'm blocking my own potential royal. But I do have some really monster flops I can catch. That is not one of them. So I'm just going to check and basically put no more money in the pot. I don't feel like this is a scenario where I really want to start trying to bluff very much. You know, yeah, I guess if everybody checks twice, I could take a stab at it. I'm maybe the most likely player to have a 4. Somebody could make a straight now, I guess. But, with this many limpers, I feel like somebody's probably got like a pair of 7s or a pair of 3s and is likely to be kind of stubborn with them. If I were to pot it, I'm probably getting everything but quads or a big pair to fold. Okay, so they did make the wheel. They have the straight. And they had the wrap on the turn, which, when on a tripped board, a wrap is kind of hilarious. But if nobody has a pocket pair, which it turns out nobody did, and the straight was good, then so again, I maybe could have taken that pot. And I think it's good to always consider and be alert to those. When I'm multi-tabling or doing something else and not super focused, I find sometimes I just all those opportunities I just let pass, and I don't even give any thought to it. Sometimes when I'm paying hyper focus, I might want to take a stab at too many of those pots, but it's definitely good to actually observe them and really make a decision about each board individually and the context, the situation of what your opponents are doing. All right. Generally a good board for the Razor. Here, let me type something. Okay. So this looks like a limp and a raise and a call. This is, I mean, it hits a raising range. It hits, I guess, a limping range. It's hard to know really what people are limping. Jack 9, 6, 9 are straights. There's tons of draws. I mean, there's diamonds, and a 9 or a jack or a 6 with any board pair is going to make some kind of a straight draw. It's a little peculiar to see them bet $7 after checking back the flop. I think they probably shouldn't have any really large bets on that particular turn card. If they didn't have the nuts on the flop or something really big on the flop, they probably don't have anything really big on the turn. As I mean, you can check back some of those hands, but mostly you're going to be betting them in position. So I find their turn bet is not super credible in terms of representing a hand or a range that should be betting like 3/4 pot. Raise from the cutoff. So in terms of that sort of bet sizing, in general, when our range is stronger than our opponent's range, we generally get to bet more frequently. And when we have more of the very strong range, like more of the very strong hands in our range, so we have a nuttier range, right? We have a lot of very good hands. Like here, the raiser should have ace-ace in their range. The caller shouldn't, right? They should generally be 3-betting their ace-ace, whereas the raiser is going to raise every combo of ace-ace. I think this is playable. I've got a pair, a connector, and a nut suit. This does not look like a hand that I want to play against a 3-bet, so a little unfortunate, but I will fold. And I will mark this one after it completes. But yeah, when we have the higher concentration of the really good hands, right? We're going to have, say, top set, and our opponent shouldn't have top set. In that scenario, I think what we can do is we generally can use the bigger bet sizes if we want, because those are the hands that want to put in a lot of money, the kind of high-end, very likely to be good, more likely to... Also, the thing about the best hands is not just that they're more likely to win, it's also that they can win against other very strong hands, right? If I have a set of aces and the board is ace, jack, 7, I can beat a set of jacks. So you can have a hand that you're very excited about that's losing to me. Whereas if I have a set of 7s, then I can't beat a set of jacks. I can beat ace, jack, and I can beat some draws. So if I want to put in a lot of money, there aren't going to be as many hands that you're going to want to put in a lot of money with that aren't beating me, right? That I'm ahead of, that I'm crushing. Even ace jack, when I have a set of 7s, that's great, that's nice, but I'm not crushing it the same way I'm crushing jacks when I have aces, right? Ace jack has 4 outs against bottom set, or top 2 pair has 4 outs against bottom set because it can make a bigger full, whereas middle set or bottom set only has 1 out. It has to make quads against the bigger, the bigger set. All right, I'm going to mark this person a green person, not a Martian. I could just start calling people Martians and purple people eaters. I don't know. I'm not gonna do that. That's not what I'm gonna do. So okay. Back to the hands. The garbage hand. Got to stay hydrated. All right, so yeah, this person is limping quite a few hands. They have this shorter stack, which is often kind of giveaway that somebody's not trying to play seriously. Now, sometimes people are trying to play seriously, and they're playing with this very short stack. And it's a very deliberate thing. And, it is what it is. But in this super high rake environment, I don't think that's where the money's at. All right, 7-6-4-4. Not a hand we want to play up in the hijack. I think on the button, I would open that, right? We got some connectivity. We got a weak suit, a pair. I think all those things add together. All the cards kind of work together in a useful way, where if we're going to have position for the whole hand, and we're probably only going to be up against one player, or maybe even take it down pre-flop, I think that makes sense. There's a raise and a defense on King 10-9. Now, this is not a board that I think the in-position player is going to have a big advantage on. Yes, they can have more King-King, like top set combos, but there's so many straight combos, and out of position I think is going to have a lot of those. That's not to say that in-position shouldn't bet and that they can't make some large bets, but it's the sort of board that I think out of position can do quite well on and can defend very comfortably on. Right, limped blind versus blind battle here. I mean, either player can have a lot of 7x, right? The big blinds can have literally any combination, so they'll have a fairly high, not a high density of 7x, but any 4 cards that you can think of that, you know, don't have like ace or aren't super good hands. Because the very strong hands, they're probably going to raise pre-flop. So they don't literally have 100% of combinations. They have 100% minus, you know, it's a decapitated range, I like to call it. It's losing the head of the range. Yeah, there's another range that has everything except the nuts, and I call it something else, but we'll save that for another day. Okay. Multiple straights available, right? 2, 3, and 7, 8. Doesn't seem particularly convincing that anybody would have any of those. I think a hand like 10-10 could put a significant bet out there. The only reason I think in position shouldn't use a large bet size very often is, like, what's out of position ever going to call with for the large size? I don't know. I think it's a little odd. And here I am going to go ahead and raise. My hand's not super premium, but it's pretty good. 4 cards that all work well together. Not so well on that flop. I'm mostly going to miss this flop with my raising range out of the small blind. My opponent's going to have a lot more of this flop, being a limper who's fairly loose. There's just a lot that they can call with there that's going to beat my king high on the flop or turn. Now I hit a queen. I think that's good. I think I'm going to win the pot. I don't see really getting value there. I thought briefly about betting $1 just to kind of keep them from doing anything annoying and maybe getting value from a 1-pair hand. I think people call with like any pair there, whether or not they should. What they had deuce deuce 7 9. Okay, so they were blocking a lot of straights. They actually had a pretty good bluffing hand, and given my apparent disinterest in the pot, I think throwing the bluff out there would have been a good idea for them. So ultimately their final hand was a pair of deuces. Do I think they would have called a $1 bet with deuces? I don't know, maybe. Like, people do things. They're like, it's $1. But you know, maybe not. And on the flop, I imagine I actually had very good equity against that particular hand, as you know, all of my 12 overcard outs were good. Plus I had diamonds, and plus I think I could make a runner straight. I could not make a runner straight. That was impossible. That's not true. All right, so queens, without much more. I mean, I have a suited 10. I have a 6. This is in that kind of uncomfortable, like, I feel, this is bad. I don't like it. I already don't like it. I recant my overlimp. This player doesn't have enough chips to really make me want to overlimp just to get in pots with them. So, and then they back raise. So I don't like my play at all. And, yeah, so they had a nice hand, you know, double suited connector. If you're going to be able to get it in for a small amount. Pre-flop, we can see they had 51%. Interesting. 51% versus 41%. You know, both players had basically just rundowns, and one had 2 suits, and the other had 3 suits. I think I fold this because the 7's a, you know, pretty useless card, and not suited to the ace. So I'm going to mark the queens, though, not because I have a question about them, because I feel pretty confident, like, that was just bad, you know, and I just want to mark it to remind myself to look at it and be like, oh yeah, don't do this, right? That might be the most valuable hand I played in the session, because it might be the thing that I can, this is not a good hand. Suited to the ace, just no. I mean, not suited to the ace. Suited to the ace even, I'm not sure. I think with the king, it's probably playable. And actually, I'm going to mark this and just look at kind of where it falls in the like what hands in this vicinity do I want to play? Because I think it's probably closer than I at first thought. And if it's suited to the ace, I think it's probably playable. But yeah, sometimes, you know, those hands that are just kind of throwaway hands where like you lose $1 or you get involved in a pot you shouldn't have. This would be a pretty good board for this hand. But those can be the most valuable if you can see that and make a solid adjustment to your game, right? Sometimes it's the small adjustments that have the big effect, that yield the big, you know, results in terms of altering your results, especially if it's a situation that comes up frequently. A small error made frequently can be much more important and much more valuable to correct than a large error made infrequently, right? If I blow $100 every 10,000 hands, like, okay, that's bad, but blowing $1 every 100 hands is the same, right? So I think that maths out. This is a hand that I do believe overlimping in the small blind should be fine. The player behind me is fairly aggro. They can only make it 4 though, and I think that this is still an okay investment in this spot. Out of position, I'm not crazy about it, but I have, you know, connectivity, I have a suit, I have a pair of 7s, so a chance at, you know, flopping a set. Now I flop the underside of, you know, the under open-ender. So a jack doesn't give me the nuts. Only 3 of the 6s give me the nuts. And I do have a 10. Against a small bet, I think, you know, third pot or maybe half pot. Maybe I continue this. But I think this is a hand that's very easy to overvalue. The 2 7s in my hand no longer really add more value. Yeah, if I hit a 7, okay. And if I hit a 6 or a jack, then someone's less likely to have 7, 8 with me. But just a lot of ways of that hand playing out poorly on future streets, and I'm out of position, which is a big negative there, which is one of the arguments against overlimping pre-flop. But I thought the hand had kind of enough value to that. I'm going to overlimping range. Okay, make a note in terms of that kind of situation, right? Overlimping the okay. Now this one I have to actually consider. Overlimping the small blind. I made a note. All right, Jack 10 9 9. I do have I have a pair that, you know, I can make a set against a nice big hand. Because the big blind is so loose and someone I really want to play pots with, I am gonna flat here. I am aware that everyone behind me has done some 3-betting. All right, so I have a gut shot and top pair. I think I'm gonna make a. Is this nitty? I don't know. My first instinct is to fold, but then I want to think about it slightly longer. I have 4 outs to the nuts, and then my 9s are probably good. That's another 2. That's 6. I'm going to call here in position. It's a little bit of a float. Now I have an open-ender to go with my no longer top pair. The open-ender's not to the nuts. The king could be good. I'm actually going to fold this and mark it. Not super happy with this hand. Not super happy on any of the streets. And I don't feel like I actually explained a good Badoogie hand. My thought process. I'm responding in chat. So yeah, so anyway, I stream on a significant delay when I'm playing poker because you know, I don't want to show the world my whole cards in case someone plays in the same game as Cardiff Giant was saying that we play the same games, but not at this time of day. I personally am more likely to watch a stream of someone playing when I am not playing. I mean, I don't watch people stream while I'm playing, but I mean, there is something to be said for actually watching like somebody talk through their thought process and kind of having this go on in the background while playing and then maybe pausing it. I'd rather watch a video than a stream while playing, but to each their own. Um, and yeah, let's see. Do you stream or do you let me see. Um, mm, oh, no, that's cool. Um, but yeah, it's I don't know. I'm losing my thought process. But yeah, so streaming on the delay, the downside is it's not as good in terms of, getting the interaction and actually being able to chat effectively with people. And now my thing is giving me a hard time. But I think it's a necessary evil of streaming poker live. When I play micros, sometimes I don't use a delay because like who's who's stream sniping intentionally or accidentally. I mean, it's possible, but also it's micros. I don't care as much, but I'm trying to develop good habits as I move up stakes. I definitely don't want to be giving people my whole cards when I'm playing like 255 or 1-2 even or whatever. So thus the delay. I've seen some other streamers just like cover their cards up and kind of talk about maybe how they're playing their range or just talk about something completely other than poker. That's not what I'm going for right now. I have thought about mostly analyzing hands just purely from a range perspective. I think that would be really cool um for some viewers, but like that seems very niche. And I maybe don't want to niche down that far. Uh, but let me know, whether it's on Twitch in the chat or whether it's on YouTube in the comments. How do you feel about seeing the streamer's cards, seeing my cards versus, if I were to cover this up and basically here I'll do this, like do something like this, right? Which kind of looks ridiculous. I mean, there's other ways of doing it less in a less ugly fashion. But I could be sitting here saying, well, I probably want to mostly be betting this size. My range is going to have such and such, and my betting range is mostly going to be this, this, and this. And my bluffing range, I should probably have these things. I don't know. I could probably stream that way without a delay, and that might be interesting. I'll probably try that at some point. That's not the main thing I'm going for right now. But right now, I'm mostly just trying to establish good habits in terms of playing and focusing, doing a stream every day to kind of gradually build a following. I'm not in a big hurry, but it'll be nice when it's a thing. I'm just trying to kind of put in the consistent effort, both in terms of feeling healthy about my game and playing and studying. Let's focus on this hand now, though. Ace King suited is nice, but I'm blocking the second nut flush, so that's a negative. I do the 7 and the 6 also are kind of like they're okay-ish. Against the one limper, I would raise, and with the second limper, I'm actually going to fold. Double suited, I'm certainly playing this hand. I don't think the PLO matrix has anything for limpers, but I'm going to mark that and think about what positions I will play this hand in as an open raise. And if I open raise it from the low jack, maybe I should not, ISO here. Obviously, I'm not going to get an isolation is the thing, right? I'm probably going to get a 3-4 way pot. Just moved up from PLO50 and they play pretty much the same with lower rake. Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't think the rake's that much lower, is it? Do you have any stats on talking to someone in the chat? On like how many BB per 100? Um, I don't know. I played some PLO 50. I was playing like PLO 10, and I was just like, I'll just play 50 cent a dollar because I just sat down to see kind of what the games were like, and I was like, oh, the games are like the same, right? And I mean, I've played No Limit at this level and higher, I guess, but No Limit's never a game that's just like really resonated with me. I don't know. No Limit Hold'em's just I don't wouldn't call it my least favorite poker game, but it's far from my favorite. Uh, I come from more of a limit hold'em background and mixed games as well. I enjoy a lot. So a mixed game, I like live games that have half PLO and half no limit. I think the blinds should usually be twice as high in the no limit as in the pot limit Omaha because people just there's just less action in the hold'em. Also, I think a three blind structure can help kind of juice up the action or maybe play with an ante. I should get some games like this going at the casino sometime when I start going to the casino on the regular. All right, this would be a interesting spot to have Jack Nine, which they did. The nice thing about Jack Nine here as the second nut straight is it's also blocking the nut straight, but very easy for somebody to happen to have King Jack. And we lost the loosest player at the table. That's a pretty big hit. I immediately check my time to see how long I've been streaming, see when I want to go to the session review. I'm gonna stick it out at this table a little while longer. It's not a terrible table. The player on my left, I think, is definitely playing too many hands and playing too aggressively. And the player across from me is playing too few hands and playing not aggressively enough. The player on my right, it's maybe a good player. And this player who just opened to $2 is kind of still a bit of a question mark. They're, in for a kind of smaller amount. So often that's a symbol that like they're not, like a super serious player. It doesn't mean they can't be a serious player. It doesn't mean they are bad. And it doesn't mean that they necessarily have a terrible thought process. It's just one indication in the direction that more than likely that it's a little more likely than average that they're a little squishy maybe. All right, so we have full pot and so they did the fold and show that top set. Okay. I kind of hope they were drawing dead against a royal, but I don't know why. I don't know. I just think it's funny when people are drawing dead. Except when it's me. I don't like it when it's me. Ace Queen 8-6. I don't even know why I'm really hesitating. I think I was just going to talk about it more. Maybe like if I have the suited ace, then I've got a little bit more to think about. If I was double suited, it's probably a reasonable 3-bet hand, I believe. Although maybe the ace queen sort of situation is more of a 4-bet type thing. Still working on not still working on, like just working on those 3 and 4-bet ranges, as I haven't really I've had some like general principles to kind of ponder, but I haven't had a source for like, hey, this is basically what you should 3-bet, this is basically what you should 4-bet, and now I do, and so I'm going to dig into that in the post-session review, but we will get to that later. For now, we have this limper that it seems like they're playing progressively more of their hands. Maybe they were tight before. I mean, if you look at their stats and you look at my stats, they don't look that much different, right? I've played fairly passively this session and quite tight. I think a lot of that is just how the cards have been dealt, right? We never want to make huge inferences, huge reads based on small amount of data. Ace King 4-6 double suited. I will certainly open this from this position. Generally, I think this is not a great 4-betting hand because I have a king, and in theory, we don't want to have a king because we want them to have king, because in theory, they might fold king. I'm not sure how much people fold king here. And in fact, it might yield some fruit to actually try to review, since this is ignition, and we can go back and see what they folded, to review like all of my 4-bets and see what people are folding to a 4-bet after 3-betting. That's like actual data that we can get in ignition that we can't get on most sites. So I think that would be a really interesting project but I need to build a much bigger sample size. I haven't been playing a ton. I did play a good amount extra yesterday after the session, and the games were good, and the results were good. I ran good, felt good playing, so it was a kind of all the good things. Whereas today I feel kind of medium playing. Like I don't feel terrible, but I've already made a number of plays that I look at and I'm like, I don't know. Which gives us a lot to review, right? So that gives a lot of every mistake that we can identify and then correct is an opportunity to improve. Whereas, wait, what happened there? Okay, let's play this hand. Ace king. Yeah, this we're not gonna play from the hijack. Oh, the board was paired. Okay, never mind. I was like, why didn't all the money go in? The board was paired. That's why. Because they both had the nut straight, but it wasn't the nuts. So it was just, the best straight. We should have a specific terminology for calling something the nut straight, but not the nuts, right? The nut flush, but not the nuts. The nut house, but not the nuts. That's, I don't think that's something that we have like really concise language for. So I'm always into trying to come up with concise language. Like the low jack or the nut shot, right? You have a gut shot to the nuts, I call it the nut shot. Like, no. That's how the other person feels when you hit it. All right, raise in a flat. So when we don't have stats that are really giving us a solid sense of exactly how someone's playing, like this person with $41 who's 44.33, we keep adding or losing players, and that's making the stats jump around a little bit because they're filtered. I'm gonna make another note. Filter for 4 to 6, not 5 to 6, because I think 5 to 6. There's just too many four-handed hands in these games, and so too often the HUD's jumping around. And I think having a little lower accuracy but more consistency, if that makes sense, might be beneficial. All right, so Jack, Jack, Trey, Trey, J, Trey, J, Trey. And then a pot-sized bet after no bet on the flop. Okay. Are you betting a 3 that way? I don't think so. Pretty trashy hand here. But yeah, like looking for actual concrete plays that a person is making in order to... I think I just realized that this person is new-ish to the table, not super new. But I think I don't think that's a person who's been here for like 49 hands or whatever. But seeing, every time we get a showdown, right, where we get to see someone's cards, or if somebody, that was the player who showed and folded set on the river, I believe, right? I don't want to make that note because I'm not 100% certain, but I'm pretty sure. So that's the sort of thing we can write down and be like, yeah, they did this one thing. We know this about them. That doesn't mean we know that they will always do that, but we know that they're capable of it, right? I try to keep my notes focused on, like, facts, things that we know this person did this thing, and then we don't draw over large inferences from those. We just say, all right, we know that they are capable of this, right? When someone does a thing, we know they're capable of it. Double suited jacks and tens, probably a pretty good 3-betting hand, but on the button I'm going to flat. Generally more flatting on the button than in the cutoff or the hijack. I know I'm going to, I know I'm going to see the flop in position. I think this hand is really good for calling a 3-bet, especially in position. This board is really not good for continuing, and I think it's just a trivial fold. I mean, even if I'm ahead, like I'm not really ahead. Oh wow, they both have aces. Interesting that the other person didn't put anything in after that. I'm curious to see what my equity was pre-flop against them. I think it's pretty good. I think, are we going to do pre-flop? Yeah, we'll do pre-flop. I think my equity was pretty good against them pre-flop because I've got 2 set draws where my, let's see. Let's see. My spades were dead, and did I have clubs? And my clubs were dead. So my equity's not as good. I'm double suited, but my suits are both covered, so that's bad. But, I've got the straight draw to go with the double set draw, and they can't make oversets, right? If I flop a set, then they have a lot fewer ways of winning the hand. Also, I know if I flop a set, it doesn't give them one to their flush draws because their flush draws are the same as mine. So that's a little counterbalancing factor. Let's see. Raises, AA, flats, 3-bet. Multi-way. So I think that's generally bad, right? My understanding is that we do want to flat some 3-bets in position with aces. But in a 4-way pot, that seems a lot less correct, where I believe you probably want to mostly be jamming there pre-flop. You might not be getting like an EV bonanza, but you might. You could have someone crushed, right? And, the other thing is that flop with the king on it. Like, they both had aces and the stack to pot ratio was so low that, sure, I guess just get it in. But, like, I don't know, a 3-way 3-bet pot and a king high flop, like, someone's got top set pretty often, I think. So, not saying that they necessarily played the hand wrong, but I think they probably played the hand wrong. Not to say that they should have folded the flop, but I think the one person should have jammed pre. And the other person, I don't know, seemed fine. Ace, queen. Although, again, on the flop, they should have been, a little concerned. But with the less, 0.5 to 1 or 3 to 5 stack to pot ratio, you probably just get it in there. Okay, and we continue folding. So now this player who's newish, I'm just gonna straight up promote them. I'm gonna say green. They've played every hand so far, which is a fantastic sign, and like not that big an outlier in these games. The player directly across from us, now they're overlimping, and I believe they probably overlimped or something in the last hand, but another good sign. Not gonna paint them as some kind of weaker player yet, but all signs point to yes. All right, ace jack 8. Like, probably nobody has top set. Lots of big draws people can have, though. Everybody limped, so I guess middle set was also possible. 2 pair on the flop besides top and bottom just made a boat. So all those draws that were like wraps and like straight draw, flush draw, they all just went way down in value, right? They went from being like really nice hands to being like, I hope I get there and then get a free showdown. And this person bets out. I would probably call them with any jack. A hand like ace king, I'd even be tempted because I don't really trust them that much. There's definitely a smaller bet size. Yeah, but having said that, like if I had a jack in position, maybe I'm betting the turn a lot. The thing about when you have those trips and there's a lot of draws available, you basically have a boat draw against straight draws and pair draws. So your draw, is you're drawing to something better than what they have. I have a particular wording that I don't want to use because it's a word I don't want to use anymore. But yeah, so now we're gonna say this person's probably kind of loose and weaker, probably. All right, we'll focus on this hand. I'll lay high. Okay, so I have top 2 pair. I said we'll focus on this hand, and then I'm like focusing on the chat. Okay, ace 7. I don't think anybody really has a 5, so my hand's probably the best hand. So I'm just gonna bet. This is kind of like leaning towards an equity denial bet. I do immediately get 2 calls, and my sense that nobody has a 5 is a little dimmed, right? somebody certainly could have a 5. Also, anybody who had some kind of a straight draw quite likely got there. Well, not any kind of a straight draw. Only the 6-4 open-ended got there and the 6-9. But the 6-4 open-ender did get there. Drawing to that on a paired board with the flush draw, I'm gonna give this person the upgrade and to VIP status, I guess. And okay, so what's interesting here is we have a raise, 2 calls by 2 loser players that we really do want to play hands with, but then we have a 3-bet, and we have ace, ace, queen, 10. So this is a very strong hand pre-flop. Basically, I think we just get it in. Maybe there is some argument for playing it in a like, oh, let's take a flop, and we're gonna have some really good spots. But like, look at that hand. I won. It says $30, but some of that's mine. I think it's including mine. But I won like 18 or something without having to see a flop, right? Without paying rake. And so I think in a game like this, kind of being a little too sort of fancy. Also, I would have been out of position. Flatting there definitely would have been a mistake, I believe. But having a chance to win a significant pot without even seeing a flop is golden in this game, right? Because the rake is so high. And, letting these players in on the relative cheap to potentially outflop me with, like, who knows what they're playing, I think would have been a significant mistake. So, not a very complicated hand to play. Like, oh, you have aces, like good aces at that. Like, yeah, just put the chips in. Pretty straightforward. But in like, I want to play hands with those players, but I don't want to pay rake, and we don't want to go too far out of our way, right? It's more like when the situation's close, then we say, okay, can I get in some hands with these players? When the situation's not close, it's like that's not going to be this overriding factor that just totally rewrites our entire strategy, I think. That's how I approach the game anyway. All right, couple more minutes of this live session, and then we'll do the session review. Maybe I'll do one more full orbit just because the game is so good. And I don't feel like we have a lot of super deep hands to review today. To do today. Not a lot of super deep hands to do today, but some pre-flop spots, which I'm going to be happy to get into, and then a few post-flop ones that the reason I don't think they're super deep is I am unable to go super deep on them. I will talk about the spots. I'll talk about what I was thinking in the hand and what I think about what I was thinking and what I think about what I did and what I want to be thinking in the future. But I don't have, like, they're not solver situations, or I'm not using solvers to, like, solve. Okay, so we have top set there. That's good for them. And now one of our friends is sitting out, and we fold, and we are pretty close to an hour. So, all right, they rebought. We'll take another orbit. Take one more orbit. But yeah, I think it's really important to kind of understand the limitations of our own knowledge, right? For me, I can get more or less definitive answers in terms of pre-flop, what I should do in terms of being balanced in this rake structure. That's not a definitive answer in terms of what I should necessarily always be doing pre-flop. I'm talking about pre-flop. Post-flop is a little more complicated, and I have a general sense of how to play post-flop, just like play poker, right? And some kind of heuristics floating around. But that's certainly something that's gonna take longer to develop really keen insight into, and I'm not currently using those tools for that purpose at the moment. I will be soon, right? We will get to that. I'll probably get simple Omaha solver, and maybe at some point I'll start using my Munker solver for Omaha. Although I've found it very very difficult to kind of get into that way. And 9-7-7 deuce. Not a hand. Even this is a spot where if this person calls or even if they fold, we can look and say, oh, the pot odds are so good, right? But like we have 5 people trying to beat us, so our equity goes way down from where it would have been. And having this 4 card hand that's basically like a 3 card hand, where there's like a 9 and a 7 and another 7, and then the deuce is just garbage. Yeah, it's suited to the 7, but like great, a 7 high flush draw and a 6-way pot. It's just hard for us not only to have enough equity here to beat 5 opponents, even given the pot odds, but it's hard to realize that equity because we're out of position. On this flop, we would have flopped top and bottom pair, which is like a very treacherous hand, right? Especially with a flush draw and some straight draws on board. And you can say, oh, well, those are those smaller straight draws. Yeah, but this person who just called a bet is playing 100% of their hands. The small blind, I mean, I'm going to say just like has a boat, right? They just have a boat. Like they could have quads, but quads, I think they might not put this pot size raise in. I feel like 9-9 is the most likely hand. What was the flop action? The flop checked around. They probably should have bet a hand like 9-9. I don't know. Maybe they don't have a boat. But somebody plays there pretty tight and disciplined, and then the board comes out 9-4, deuce 4, and they check raise multi-way. Like, they probably have a boat. So, I certainly wouldn't be doing anything with my, 9s and 4s with a 7 kicker, with my 2 extraneous pair that don't help. 9s and 7s and 4s and deuces, right? I have 4 pair on the turn. All right, king 9, jack jack. I like having a suited king. I like that the jack is not the suited one, right? Because then the jack of hearts is one of the cards that can give me a set. And when I have a jack of hearts, I'll have a set and at least a backdoor flush draw. Maybe an actual flush draw, maybe even a flush plus a set. So a lot of really good flops that can come out for this hand. There's some connectivity, right? King, Jack, 9, those are all in the same region. If a Queen 10 comes out, then I'll have a wrap. Some of those outs will not be to the nuts. A Jack will not give me the nuts, but an Ace or a 9 or an 8, I believe will. So a lot of really nice flops I can catch. This person, I imagine, is having some connection issues. Otherwise, they probably already would have crammed some money in the pot as they're playing basically every hand. This is a bad beat, right? Like, it's not really a bad beat, but like when the loose bad player, the loose generous player, I don't know, whatever, when they have connection issues, that's like when we have a hand that we want to play or they get taken away from the table. Like, that's running bad as surely as having a bad river card is running bad. Similarly, sitting around playing and having 2 people who want to play 100% of their hands is running good, right? We don't always get that. So we still have the player who has 100% of hands in the hand. This is a very nice board for the pre-flop raiser. They go ahead and half pot it. I flop middle pair and a blocker to the flush draw and a backdoor straight draw. So, my hand is still jacks, but I'm clearly going to fold here. Nothing doing really. So, the raiser gets to win that a disproportionate amount of the time because they raised and they should have the ace-ace combos. That limper might have some ace-ace in there. That's something to keep an eye on and just be aware, like, they raised their aces before and then just called a 3-bet. They might just call aces sometimes. Yeah, and in terms of pre-flop, I think it's fine. I don't like being out of position and having the worst relative position. Those are factors. Having that other player in there definitely makes me inclined to continue. And I actually want to see where that hand kind of fits in among pre-flop 3-betting range. My guess is that I probably fold that hand. I'm not sure against a button raise. But it could be a 3-bet and potentially could be a flat. But I think a lot of our 3-bets, we of course want an ace. And I have sat out. So we're going to get dealt 2 or 3 more hands. The player across from us, we need to recognize as a new player, right? They've got that shiny yellow N. 10-2-47 is not a hand I'm going to play, even double suited. it is suited trash. But yeah, to recognize like, oh, okay, this is a new player across from us. It's not that player that we had that particular read on. And when playing alone, sometimes just talking out loud and saying these things or mentally naming them, I think is important. Just make it stick in the mind, right? This player over here on our left, I think that was the person who folded the top set, but we're not certain. This player on the right is definitely the one who, raised the aces and then flatted a 3-bet multi-way. So just things to kind of remind ourselves, right, on the regular, like, okay, what, did I mark that many hands? Wow, okay. Got a lot of hands marked. Cool. But yeah, just to kind of remind ourselves what's going on at the table. Kind of, I think it's also, especially when multi-tabling, I think it's useful to kind of take inventory on a semi-regular basis. Sort of be like, okay, what's going on at this table? All right, we have this cat playing 100% of hands. On our left, we have a couple of kind of, medium, sort of too loose, but not super loose. Kind of aggro, but not super aggro players. And on the right, we have someone who's pretty clearly, I think, trying to play well. And quite possibly is playing well, right? I mean, they can be a serious player. We haven't seen a bunch of contradictory information to that, so their stats are in the vicinity of where you probably want them to be. Maybe a little too loose, maybe a little too much of a gap between the voluntarily put money in pot and pre-flop raising, i.e. possibly calling too many hands pre-flop, which is the same gap I have, which I also, my analysis of my play today is I think I have probably called too many hands pre-flop today, and that is an error, but we will circle back to that after one more hand following this one. So let's take a look at my hand for the moment. Like, I flopped, or if I were in the hand, I would have an open-ended straight flush draw, but if I make a flush and it's not the straight flush, I have the worst flush, right? You can't make a too high flush. They could have like 2-7 is the lowest other flush cards they could have. So that's not delightful. The pair of sixes means that if I did hit the straight, then I would have had a blocker to that same straight. And the 8 means that if the 7 hit and I had 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I would also have the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, which is nice. So I had multiple nut straight outs. And, the board, like on that river, I wouldn't be very happy with my hand, right? The extra, is this person? No. Okay, so we're going to fold and pivot to the session review. All right, let's close this. Usually I wait for the end of the hand, right? Oh well. Replay all hands and report. Maybe that one won't import. That's okay. I didn't put any money in the pot. We're having a result, so it's not going to really affect results except for hands played and win rate and blah, 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 blah. But that's fine. All right, so am I starting at the end? I am starting at the end from the most recent. That's fine. We'll do that. All right, so this is pocket jacks with a king and a 9 suited. What are we going to do with those? There's a raise, and I don't think the matrix, which I'm not going to pull up on screen, I will at some point ask Upswing Poker. In fact, I'll do this. Whether I can use the matrix on screen as... I think it's probably good advertising for them. If anything, if there's any objection, I imagine it's mostly a, we don't want people to see all the things and then screenshot it and whatever. But I don't know. I think that would be difficult for people to do. Whatever. All right, so we're gonna go to micro stakes, and what's my question? My question is, I guess this would be kind of multi-way squeeze. That's what this is, right? I am the small blind versus all the squeezes are squeeze cutoff versus No, that's not what I'm gonna do. Okay, so I'm the small blind, and we're just gonna say, what do I do versus the button, right? With Jack Jack single suited combos, and I have a King Nine suited, and it looks like in general, oh, I'm going to play it. It says to raise and then fold to a three bet with this, I believe is what the chart's saying. So if this person if it folded to the button and they raised, then I should come in with a three bet. And if they four bet me, then I can fold. I'm not blocking ace ace, and my hand doesn't play that well, I guess, against a four betting range, and I'd be out of position. So this would be a hand that I can raise and fold to a four bet. But given that so we have that piece of information, right? The balanced approach is if it folded to this button and they raise, I three bet. If they four bet, I fold. If they call, we take a flop. If they fold, cool, I win the pot. But we have this limper. Okay, so how are we going to use that piece of data to address this situation? Well, there's a limper, and then the button isolates. Their range is probably a little tighter than it would be if it had folded to them, but maybe not. Maybe it's even a little wider because this player's just so loose and they really want to play hands with them. Regardless, we have a hand that we know we would play against an open raise range, right? So given the fact that we do want to play and take flops against this player in the cutoff, who will almost assuredly call the raise, I think it's quite reasonable to flat here. And you can look at this and say, well, it doesn't play great out of position. Sure, but it's going to flop some pretty good things to play out of position, right? We're not like primarily putting all our chips on the king high flush draw. We're not primarily putting all our chips on the straight draws. We've got a pair of jacks. We can flop a set. And I think sets are some of the hands that play a little better out of position. And we're also, because our hand, all the cards work well together, we're going to flop a lot of combo things where we can really put some pressure in post flop, and we can be very confident about how we're putting money in. We're going to have some boards that we're like, yeah, let's go. And when we're out of position, I think that's often something that we really want to look for, right? And we end up getting, this situation where we're four-handed. There's, the stack to pot ratio is, I guess it's more like 5-6 to 1 here, right? So it's not low, but it's middle. It's kind of medium. So, if I were to bet out and somebody raised, I could just jam. Or if I check raised, most of the money would be in. And then there were just, so it's going to be a two-street game, basically. Unless I bet and then bet and then bet. There would be room for, like a half pot, then pot, something like that. All right, so just looking at this flop, I just have nothing. The button should have ace-ace. They should have, some hands with, ace, king, queen, 9 type stuff. They're going to have a nice range and want to be betting here some decent amount of the time. Having 3 opponents, I don't think you bet too much, but they bet and everybody folds, and not too much more to talk about there. Okay, Jack, 10-10. This one, I wanted to check out the equities. We have the raise. I flat. I'm going to look at this hand as well. This should be... No, I need to step it back. We're going to look at, the button versus hijack. So button versus, they call it MP. I hate that, but whatever. Jack's double suited. And Jack 10-10 is going to be raise and call a 3-bet, right? So I was going to say, I think this is probably a hand that's strong enough that we can 3-bet it. However, this player, I decided to flat. I think it's going to play pretty well for a flat. I think this is a player who's going to make a lot of big errors post-flop, probably. But having said that, knowing that this is a 3-betting hand, or it's of quality, where we can 3-bet it, is good. That's a useful data point, right? Double suited jacks and 9s, also Jack 10-9, Jack 9-8. So like a really good double suited jacks. Those are ones that we want to be 3-betting with in this situation. Oh, let's see. Sorry. So then we're not going to really get the information in terms of once there's okay. How do we use that information to address what we do after this situation comes up? Well, if this hand is good enough to 3-bet and then call a 4-bet, I'm very comfortable saying it's good enough to call a 3-bet, right? Like, if we're supposed to 3-bet and call a 4-bet, we must be able to call a 3-bet. So I think this is a very, kind of no-brainer, straightforward, like, yeah, of course pre-flop, right? There's not too much to think about. It's just flatting versus 3-betting. And I think I do want to start 3-betting more. I'm way too low in 3-bets. This session I had 0, right? So this would have been a spot where I could do that. And the one player decides to just flat, which I think makes a lot of sense. Here comes out the board, and we see aces with a suit. 6 deuce. This is a very bad, one of the worst, I think, suited aces. And then over here, it's a slightly less bad suited aces, or single suited, right? So they both had very good hands, but neither of them had super elite hands. And we will launch equity calculator, and I will throw in my hand, Jack 10, Jack clubs, 10 clubs, Jack, what was it, spades, 10 of spades, and we'll erase the board, and we'll just see what's my equity here. I think my equity is going to be quite good. I think I'm actually going to have more than 33%, maybe close to 40. Oh, no. Take it back. Because they have my suits covered, I think I'll probably have close to third equity. Really, not a lot of my straight cards are gone. The aces are all gone, and one queen is gone, but nothing else is gone. So I think I'm going to be getting my fair share here, more or less. Whoa. Okay. All right. So my first instinct was a lot closer. Wow. So, okay, I've got 45% here, which actually, like, The interesting thing is, like, if this is what I have here, then if I jammed pre-flop, right, and we got all the money in, the problem is that we've got 80, we've got more money on the side versus one player. So, but, you can think about starting to just get money in. The reason we want to dial that back is, like, if we look at the pre-flop situation here, I did have a situation where I'm going to be able to take a flop multi-ways in position, right? I have absolute position, I have relative position on this one player. On the the raiser's gonna, basically the 3-better's gonna decide what to do. Then the other person, if that person bets, the other person has to decide. And then let's say I flop top set and it goes jam, call, and then I jam. It's a very nice situation for me. So I'm good with calling here. But I understand now, if this equity is that good against 2 people who have aces, including having both of my suits covered, which means random 10 jack would also be very good. That's going to be a very, very nice situation for me. So I understand why I would want to 3-bet and then call a 4-bet. This is a hand that I looked at and I was like, wow, that's pretty. And then I thought, well, I'm probably overestimating it a little bit, because it's easy to overestimate hands in PLO. But I think I actually was underestimating it in terms of really thinking about how good it is. I can run it against different. Let's do that. I'm worried. I'm a little worried about getting things crashing again, because that happened before. We're just gonna call this up. We're gonna have Omaha high. The board, no board. I have Jack clubs, Jack spades, 10 clubs, 10 spades. Doesn't actually matter the suit. I'm gonna have ace ace, and then ace ace, and we'll see what kind of equity we have in that scenario. We have 44.46. So yeah, we're gonna win less than half the time, but if we get the money in 3 ways, we're doing really nice. Let's see how well we're doing against aces. I think our equity is going to be slightly higher, right? No, it's not. It might be lower, because then they can overset us. Yeah, so it's going to be around 40 is my guess. 43. Okay, so it's slightly lower. And then if we give ace ace and king king, our equity is definitely going to go down, but I think it's still going to be over the 33%. I believe 34%. Okay, so very interesting stuff. And of course, we can go way deeper on stuff like that. I don't want to go too deep right now. There is something to be said for depth over breadth, but that's not really the theme of this stream. I think at some point I will do a series called On the One Hand. Basically, take a single hand and do like a really long video about one hand and about all the information we can extract from just a single hand, just a single instance. But let's move on. All right, Ace King 7 6. This is, what do I want to call this? This is against limpers. Do we have any advice for versus limpers? It does not look like it. So that's fine. It would be nice, but of course, solvers don't tell you how to play against limpers, except maybe like in tournament situations and anti situations, very low rake situations. You might have some theoretically correct open limps. That's not to say you can't have some exploitatively useful open limps, but what happens is in general, we want to be, in general, the correct thing is to raise. And with the rake, they might have just not included open limping as an option. Sims get really big the more options you allow. So, okay, let's look at this hand. What do I want to do with this hand in the cutoff is the first question. That's not the question. Let's see what we would do with it in the... let's split the difference. Let's go for MP, right? The hijack. Am I open raising this hand from the hijack? If I am, I think maybe it's a reasonable hand to raise. I think what I said here was if it folded to me, I probably open raise, and if there was just the one limper who was very loose, I would ISO, or I would raise attempting to get heads up. But with this other player in there, I'm like, nah, I'm not going to get heads up. And I ended up folding, right? I'm glad I folded. I think that was the play here. But let's see. Ace, King, single suited. Oh, no. Ace, King, not King, King. And with a 7-6, it is saying we should raise and then fold to a 3-bet from the... Right, on the left is in position. So if we got, so raise and mostly fold to a 3-bet. And I guess if we got 3-bet by the big blind, we can call. So that's in middle position. So if we look at it also, slightly worse hands we can come along with. So I'll go back and say, would I open this from the low jack or under the gun? And the question is, let's see, Ace King, single suited. Ace King 7-6, no. Actually, with the good suit, which this is the good suit, but it's not the best suit, right? Because we don't want the ace and the king. We want the ace and the 7 or the ace and the 6. Yeah, we can make a royal, but nobody can make the second nuts. So it's not going to play as well. We're not going to extract value as much. But it does look like this is a reasonable open from, I guess, any position with the suited ace. Having the king, I think, is actually more valuable than in the past I've given credit for. So we'll move on to the next hand, though. Okay, Jack 10, 9, 9, and we're facing a raise. So what I want to do first is say, okay, how do I play this against a hijack, right? So I'll go back. I look at, what am I in the cutoff versus hijack, and I have 9s is like the type of hand, and single suited 9-9 Jack 10. It does want me to play. It wants me to call. Okay, so whether I have the good suit or the bad suit, which I have the bad suit, right? I'm suited to the 10, not the jack. I can flat here, and so that's nice. That just like in general, this is a good flat. If like it only wanted to flat with a slightly better hand, although it's hard, like only the good suit, only the jack high and fold the 10, I would still say flatting here is probably good because we have this player in the big blind. And so I feel good about this hand in terms of, or I feel good about how I played it, right? What I can learn from it is, yeah, this is the sort of hand it's pretty good. We can flat against middle position, and in this particular instance, not only were we flatting against middle position, but we had a very loose big blind who was playing most of their hands earlier. I guess, was this a tighter player, or did they start to tighten up? Oh, that's odd. I feel like at some point they started playing 100% of their hands, but it wouldn't. It doesn't make sense. Oh well, let's not worry about it. Anyway, pre-flop seems fine, right? So that's the pre-flop checkup. We look at the flop and they bet, and my first instinct is like, okay, I've got a gut shot and I've got top pair, but this is PLO. I have none of my suit, which is definitely a downer. Um, you know, they bet 3/4 pot. I don't really want to put up too much resistance here where like they are, and this player had been fairly tight. This isn't a great board for their range. Like the ace combos, I don't think should be like 3/4 potting here. If you look at the stack to pot ratio, it's well over 10. So I don't think you want to pile in money with an overpair. So I think they probably should be checking a lot to me, which means that their range is probably going to be probably stronger than it otherwise would be. Like maybe they're betting here with like 7-7. Maybe they have the last two jacks. The fact that I have a jack and I'm blocking top set is nice. I can hit a 9 and feel pretty good about my hand. I can hit an 8 and feel great about my hand. I ended up floating here, which I think is questionable, but maybe defensible. If I had the backdoor flush draw, which would basically be I had any other flush draw or any of those cards were a heart, I'd feel a lot better about it. But these kinds of heads-up situations, I'm just not super confident in. So they bet 3/4 pot again. This makes me feel like ace-ace is not a big part of their range. Maybe jack-jack still. They could have bet the flop with overpairs like king-king or queen-queen, but again, it feels like a board where they shouldn't be doing that too much. They can have some really nice draws here also, like a jack high rundown. A hand like mine, but make one of the 9s and 8 is a very nice hand, right? It's got top pair and it's got the wrap on the flop. On the turn, it's not quite as good because now a lot of those cards are going to make a better hand of straight. Having the 10 and the 9 is fairly uncomfortable for me in that it means, an 8 is the nuts. So I've still got that. But if a king comes, ace 10 beats me. So my hand's still pretty good. If I had a pair of 10s, it would be a lot better than having the pair of 9s because then I'd be blocking the ace 10 more. I'm blocking it a little, but I can still run into it. So open-ended with only one of those cards being the nuts, the 9 being very questionable at this point, I think, but still possibly good. I feel like this is close-ish. If my open-ender were all to the nuts, I think I'd probably call here, especially since the board is rainbow. And because I'm not blocking that much on the board, they should be more weighted towards sets and 2-pair. Maybe they have a hand like Queen Jack. Maybe they had like Queen Jack 9-8 or Queen Jack 10-8 or something. So I don't know. I think this fold is fine. I think the flop call is fine, but probably a little too loose. Yeah, so I would be very interested in a hand like this. This is the type of hand you want to put in a solver, where you're looking at it and you're like, okay, my opponent has probably a fairly well-defined range pre-flop. They probably have a general sense of how they should be playing post-flop. That's the type of player we really want to have that sort of solver backbone of like, where to default to, right? Being like, okay, these are the hands I'm supposed to call, these are the hands I'm supposed to fold, these are the hands I'm supposed to raise, and then I'll start with that and I can make exploitative adjustments. But in a situation like this, that's where I really want that information, and I don't have that right now, and I'm fine with that. That's fine. We'll go on to the next hand. All right, how many more do we have? Oh, several. Okay. So I was going to do a thing at noon. Maybe it'll be more like 12:15 or 12:30. Fortunately, the person that I'm doing that thing with is, I think, watching the stream. So they will be alerted to the situation in 4 minutes because I'm on a delay. Okay, but I think we'll just go a little bit over today. Ace King 9-8, and I folded it. And I think this is probably a hand I play. Definitely a hand I play if it's suited to the ace. Let's check it out. Ace King 9-8 from the low jack, right? Or under the gun. Am I going to start calling this under the gun because the tool I'm using calls it that? That's very annoying. Okay, single suited ace king with a 9 and an 8. I have the bad suit. Yeah, I play it. Okay, so this is a raise and then fold to a re-raise, as is the double suit. No, the both single suited versions of this, whether it's suited to the ace, suited to the king, even suited to the 9. Apparently, I'm playing this. So this was a mistake, little too tight. Having said that, in a game with the rake structure this bad, this is the type of mistake I'm okay making. I don't feel like it is a very bad mistake. It's just, it's good to know, okay, in a good rake structure with a fairly regular kind of lineup, that's a hand I can open. And then when I see it in the game, I can look at it and be like, this is probably playable in a good rake structure or a less terrible rake structure, but I'm going to fold it specifically for that reason. And I think that's a good mentality to have. So this hand I hated. I overlimped. What I think I want to do is I want to raise this if I play it in the low jack, maybe in the hijack. And I'm definitely going to raise this from the cutoff, right? Cutoff, we have queens, single suited queens. That's this. And, you know, queen, queen, 10-6 in the cutoff is a hand that I want to raise and then fold. Or raise and call if I'm in position with this particular one suited to the queen. Okay, so looking at some of those combos, I feel like under the gun or in the low jack, there I said it. We are going to queen, queen, 10-6 with a single suit. We're going to just fold this one. All right, this is just a fold from the low jack. So I don't think you know, I think this person's position isn't what counts here, though. Because they're playing so many of their hands. I think if I would play this from the hijack, I think then I am going to ISO it. So I'm going to use that as sort of my lodestar, lodestone, something. Somewhere there's some sort of a saying that I'm not quite connecting with. And that's fine. So queen, queen, 10-6 is going to also be a fold from the hijack. So I think I'm better off just folding this hand. Even though, yeah, that's a player I want to play hands against. But a lot of these hands are going to go multi-way. The fact that I have a very loose and kind of aggro button behind me is just an even bigger argument for just like, yeah, just put this one in the muck, which I end up doing because there's a 3-bet. And like, let's see what they had. I think my hand was quite good against what they had. But, you know, nonetheless, maybe not quite good, but fine. Nonetheless, I don't think I need to be playing that, and certainly not for an overlimp, right? I think in this situation, I probably mostly want to raise and maybe get heads up. This player behind me, though, is going to constrict my range a little bit, kind of gating my aggression. All right, so ace 9, 8, 8. We get 3-bet. So we're going to look at first in the hijack, do I open this hand? I'm going to say fairly confidently yes, right? I was already on that tab. All right, 8-8, single suited. I guess the good suit, but kind of the bad suit because we have the extra one. So with an ace 9, we're definitely going to play it. We're going to raise fold it with the bad suit, and we're going to raise call it with the good suit. Now, technically, the good suit would be ace high and no tricolor, right? So I think raise folding because we have the one extra of our suit is okay, but it seems like it's close, right? So this hand is definitely close. I end up folding, and I think we could probably justify a call there, but again, it's close. And having the third card of our suit definitely hurts us. But we still have all those, you know, we can still make the nut flush, which is nice. All right, king, king, 7, 3. Oh, that's my alarm saying go to the dentist, which I did yesterday, so I don't need that alarm for today. But it is the stream is coming to a close, but not yet. Let's plow through. Let's power through. Yes, we'll power through. I think that's the phrase. Okay. I want to look at this cutoff versus button, right? This is a situation where somebody has already open raised, and I want to know what to do with my hand that I think I'm probably going to play. So button versus cutoff. 100 big blind stacks, and single suited kings. So most of the kings were playing King 7-3 against on the button versus cutoff open is actually just a fold. It just wants us to fold it. So sad. So we're just supposed to fold. But we call, and we catch this board. Ooh, so this was a very interesting hand that I talked about some. But, all right. So my opponent's range is what it is. On this board, I think they're supposed to check, like, just all the time, right? So they should be checking range. So in theory, they should have a lot of good hands in their checking range as well, but also a lot of hands that just don't want to put in a lot of money. If we look at the stack to pot ratio, 850, and there's 68 in the stack, that is exactly 8 to 1, right? 8 times 8 is 64, 8 times 50 is another 4, 68. So we have an 8 to 1 stack to pot ratio, which is this kind of medium land where you're not going to get it in comfortably on two streets. But if I half pot here, I can go pot, and we can at least be close to all in. Yeah, I think half pot is exactly all in, right? So if they do call, so my thought here was they're probably betting a lot of their best hands on this flop, and they're going to have a lot of vulnerable hands, some of which are going to be pocket aces, which I might be able to get to fold, and some of which are going to be actually weaker than kings but have some draw stuff and might call. So I'm going to fold out some equity, but I'm also going to get calls from some hands where I'm actually currently ahead, and I might be able to take a showdown and win. The 7 is a key card in this play. If I didn't have the 7, I definitely wouldn't do this. And this kind of shows also why King 7-3 maybe is a fold against the cutoff open, because the 3 is just not doing anything, right? The 3 is only getting in our way, hurting our backdoor flush draw, and it just doesn't help at all. I mean, unless like a 2 and a 4 come, and then we're blocking the wheel and the other straight. But overall, the 3 is just a bad card. The 7 on this board anyway is blocking 7-6, so it's a little less likely that they flop the nuts and they checked it to us. It's also a little less likely that they have a hand like 10-7 and they checked it to us, right? So we're blocking some made hands, we're blocking some draws. The 7's a good card to have. Having a backdoor flush draw is also nice to have. So I decided to go ahead and kind of sort of semi-bluff this hand where I'm trying to get them to fold some equity, but I also know I might be getting called by some hands that I'm actually ahead of. Turn is an ace of spades, and they check it to me. And I was thinking, oh, well, if they have aces, or if they had like nut clubs or something, then they're going to like this card. However, on the flop, they basically said, hey, I probably don't have a straight, but I've got something I kind of like. That's like how I'm translating their check and their call of a half pot bet. So on this turn, I'm still going to have like all of my nut combos, right? Which, you know, when I think about it, it's like, how much am I flatting with a 6 and a 7? Not a lot, right? I'm going to have some like 9-9 and 8-8 as well. And they're not going to have that much ace-ace. They're going to have some. So I kind of like betting here with the plan of just ripping the river. And there's 16 in the middle and 64 in the stack. So that's a 4-to-1 stack to pot ratio, give or take, because I rounded those numbers in the first place. And if I go pot, I can get all the money in. So I like the idea of potting here with a draw to the nuts and like sometimes being ahead and then jamming a lot of, you know, certain rivers like judiciously, right? So they check, I decide to check back, and then the river's a queen and they check it again. And it's a queen, but it's a queen of clubs. And so I think it would be fairly credible for me to be like, yes, I've got the nut flush here. And so if I had any club at all, I would put in a bet here. And if I had like the ace of clubs, I would definitely put in a bet, even without a second club, right? Just as a bluff, as, you know, trying to get maybe a 2-pair hand to fold, maybe trying to get a straight to fold even. I decide to check it back. Because I don't have a club, I think there's an argument to be made for saying, look, okay, you don't have great blockers for the hand you're trying to represent, but like it doesn't feel like your opponent really has anything here. If they had rivered the flush, they're probably leading out, at least with the ace high one. You know, you can really think about turning this into a bluff. I decided not to. I don't hate my decision. Basically, pre-flop I should fold. The flop is an ambitious bluff Once I've bluffed the flop, I think I should keep bluffing the turn. And then on this river, I think checking back and giving up was maybe the best thing to do, but going for it would have been very reasonable. And if I had a club, I think I would have done that. And I think it probably would have worked because, like, I bet the flop, I can have a lot of flush draws. The turn, okay, I didn't get there. Okay, let's take a free card. Oh, I got there. Now I bet. And they have a straight, and they're like, I'm in a straight, but the flush got there. I guess I fold. Of course, on the river, they're not afraid of my mythical 6-7 that I was pretending I had on the flop. But once I check back the turn, that chip's kind of sailed. I'm kind of like, yeah, okay, I don't have 6-7. I didn't flop the nuts. Just kidding. So, this river was something that I think went along a little bit with the story I ended up telling. But maybe not the story I should have told about having 6-7. All right, last hand. King, queen, jack. We raise, we get 3-bet. And the question is, do we want to call or do we want to jam? This is going to be cutoff versus button, which is what we were just in. All right, so, oh no, we are the cutoff. Yeah, so cutoff versus button. We have king, double suited, the best kind. Do we, no. So we raise and we call. And that's just generally what we do with these double suited kings in this spot against the button. Having the extra player in there, I don't think it's going to make a huge difference. I think either way it's okay. And we're not going to really be re-raising unless we have an ace, a second pair, or we want to unblock the queen, right? Because we want them to be able to have queens. We want them to be 3-betting us with queens, queen, whatever. Or we want kings and queens, in which case, we've got a very strong hand. So this one, we're going to raise, we're going to call, and then the flop comes, and this flop looks very similar to the previous flop. It's slightly different. But, a 9 high straight, again, is the nuts on the flop. I can have some of those. The other player can have some of those. And, like, anybody can have some nuts here. Aces and such aren't going to be, like, super thrilled on this card. I don't see a lot of reason for, like, leading out here. I'm drawing to the second nuts. I have one out to the stone cold nuts. That would be the ace of clubs. And, there's not really, like, a lot that... I'm not trying to get better to fold. I'm not trying to really eliminate that much equity. And, range versus range, I'm not doing super fantastic or anything special. All right, good to see that I did nail the Arrested Development reference. That was what power through. Good talk. So this here, 567, like, I'm not folding, right? I have kings and I have the second nut flush draw, and there's no reason to assume that anybody has the nut flush draw and or a better made hand. It's certainly all possible, but I'm getting 7+1 here. So like 8-1 almost. So I'm at least going to call this bet. Now, given that I want to call this bet, I'm taking a moment to think, the player behind me, is that somebody that I want to come along and try and get value from? Or do I maybe want to shut them out? What if this player has the nut flush draw and doesn't have my kings beat? Or what if they have like 9s and 6s and I have kings and maybe I can catch a 5 or a 3, but the player behind me has a 3 or a 5 and a 3 or something. They could have like ace, 5, 3 and be like, oh, I'm going to check the flop. And then on the turn, they're ahead of me. I feel like the player behind me almost never has a very strong hand, because with this much money in the pot, I think they just bet the nuts or a set on the flop like all the time. And so I decide to raise and basically just get heads up with this one player. And so if I get there, I'm going to win. And if I'm good, then I'm eliminating some equity possibly. Even just an ace behind me, like, I don't super want them to call. So, we end up, they had the straight and we had a flush draw, basically, right? That's it. So very direct odds, right? 7-8-1 on the turn. So we drew to our flush and we missed. And the larger raise, the putting money on top of that was just be like, hey, we're just going to play heads up with this person. And wasn't necessarily necessary, but it kind of discouraged the player behind us from like doing anything weird. Like maybe they could have raised. And I'm like, what do I do now, right? I didn't think that they had my flush draw covered, but so I think I like how I played this hand. I'm comfortable with it. And that's going to do it for today. Thanks so much for everybody watching. And if you haven't already, give a follow on Twitch, like and subscribe on the YouTube. And I'm always happy to hear feedback, things that you liked, things that you think I could do better. That's it for today, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.